Chapter 6. When I arrived at the farm, Mother held me tightly and cried for half an hour. I gave everyone all the presents I had bought for them in London, but of course what I wanted to do most of all was find Lorna, and see how she was. I wanted to tell Mother all about her, but the thought of my father's murder by the Doones stopped me. There was little chance that Lorna would love me, so why should I worry my mother about it? As soon as I could, I went to Doone Valley, but, there, I could not believe my bad luck. When I looked from the cliff top, I saw Lorna's sign, her coat on a white rock. She had needed me, and now perhaps I was too late to help her. I climbed round the outer cliffs to the waterfall, and was soon looking down towards the green fields of the valley. I stood and waited, not caring, now, if anyone saw me, and then at last a little figure came towards me. I could see she was frightened, so I went towards her slowly. "Miss Lorna, I saw your sign on the white rock, that you needed me." "Oh, yes, but that was a long time ago, 2 months or more, sir," and she looked away. She looked so sad that I thought everything was over between us, and tried to turn away and go. But when she saw that I was hurt and ashamed, she ran towards me and took my hands. "Oh John, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. How happy I was, to hear her call me John. Then she led me away to her secret room, through the cave in the mountain. Since it was partly open to the sky, plants and flowers were able to grow there, and now, in the late summer, it was beautiful. She could not look at me at first, but when she did, I could see that she had been crying. "My grandfather is not well," she said. "And now Carver Doone and his evil father, the counselor, have more control over the Doones. They want me to marry Carver. Not immediately, I am only 17. But they want me to give my promise, in front of my grandfather, that I will marry Carver. They say it's for the peace of the Doones. That's why I left the signal out for you, Mr. Ridd. They wanted to force me, but my grandfather would not let them. They won't do it, at least while grandfather is alive. But they're watching me, and following me, and I can't go where I want anymore. Gwenny is helping me. If she wasn't, I couldn't even be here, talking to you. But perhaps even you don't care about me anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, and I quickly explained about my journey to London. I told her how much I had missed her and how I had worried about her all this time. Then I showed her the present I had brought her from London, knee ring with blue and white stones. At first she cried even more, and then came and sat so close to me that I began to tremble. Then I picked up her hand and, while I was pretending to look at its beauty and softness, put the ring on her finger, "Oh, Mr. Ridd," she said, her face going red. "I thought you were much too honest and simple ever to do something like this. No wonder you are good at catching fish." "But no, John, you have not caught me yet, not completely, though I like you very much, and if you will only keep away, out of danger, I will like you even more." With tears still in her eyes, which seemed to come partly from wanting to love me as much as I loved her, she kissed my head. Then she gently took my ring off her finger, and, kissing it 3 times, gave it back to me. "John, I cannot take it now," she said. "It would not be right. I will try to love you dearly, as dearly as you could wish. Keep the ring for me until then. Something tells me I will earn it very soon. This time, I promised Lorna that I would not come back to see her for 2 months. If Carver or the counselor became violent towards her, she would signal me as before. 2 months was a long time to wait, but because of what she had said to me, I was happy. Very soon after that I told my sister Annie about Lorna. I knew she would keep my secret, and it was good to be able to talk to her about my troubles. Then she gave me a surprise. Tom Faggus had asked her to marry him, and she had agreed. But although Mother liked Tom, we both knew she would not like her daughter to marry him. And how would she feel about me wanting to marry Lorna Doone? We promised to help each other, if we could. On the very first day after the agreed 2 months, I went to find Lorna. But this time when I got to the top of the waterfall, she was not there. I waited for hours, but she didn't come. Then I saw something that made me afraid for her. While I was hiding behind a tree, a big man appeared, walking lazily down the valley. He wore a wide hat, a dark jacket and tall boots, and he carried a gun over his shoulder. As he came closer, I could see his face clearly, and there was something in it the ground beside them. Here, the cliffs widened out into broken, rocky ground, with deep shadows between the rocks. The guards were clearly not expecting an attack, and were drinking and talking. I stood and watched, and while I was wondering what to do, they began to argue, and then to fight. This gave me my chance. I went slowly along the cliff wall, and then moved quickly into the shadows of the open rocky ground. The guards were so busy with their fight that they did not see or hear me, and I was soon past them and going down the hillside into Doone Valley. Lorna had told me that her grandfather's house was the first one after the gate. So, carefully and quietly, I went towards it and stood below one of the windows. I could not shout or call out because there were other guards around the small village, but luck was with me that night. Lorna came to the window, opened it, and looked out up at the night sky. I whispered her name. She jumped on alarm, but then looked down and saw who I was. "John," she said. "Oh, John, you must be mad." I was going mad, because I didn't know what had happened to you. "But you knew I would come. I hoped you would." "But do you see they have put these bars across my window?" She put her hand out through them, and I took it and kissed it, and then held both her hands in mine. "Oh, John, you'll make me cry," she said, though I could see she had already been crying. "We can never be together." "Why should I make you unhappy?" "Try to forget me." "Never," I said. "If we want to belong to one another, Lorna, no one can stop us, only God, if He wishes it. Now tell me, why have you been kept in prison here? My grandfather is very ill now. I am afraid he won't live long. The counselor and his son are the masters of the valley. They want me here where they can see me, so that I can't escape from Carver, and Gwenny is not allowed to move about now, so I couldn't send you a message, or signal you. You must watch this house day and night, John, if you wish to save me. There is nothing they wouldn't do, if my poor grandfather, oh, I can't think only of myself, when I should think of him. How can I leave you even one more night here, Lorna?" I said. "You must, John," she said. "You're so brave, but I love you too much to let you stay any longer." "Yes, it's true. But I cannot leave my grandfather while he is dying. So, if you love me, John, you must go. I'll go for now. But when I hear that your grandfather has died, I will come and get you out of here. If I promise to take you safely away, will you come with me?" "Yes," she said. "Of course I will." So now I took her hand in mine again, and put my ring on her finger. I had kept it in my pocket since the day I had first brought it to her. This time she kept it, though she cried and held my hand tightly. "Oh, John. This can never, never be," she said. Chapter 7. I left Doone Valley by my own secret route and went home to make plans for bringing Lorna to the farm. It was time to tell Mother all about Lorna and the danger she was in. At first Mother was very angry and unhappy at my news. She talked wildly about going away and leaving the farm, but after a time she began to calm down. "When you see her, Mother," I said, "I'm sure you will love her like a daughter. And I know she will love you with all her heart, she is so good and gentle." Mother was too kind-hearted to be angry for long. She cried a little more, then smiled and said, "Well, God knows what is good for us. You must bring her here, John, and I will teach her how to be a farmer's wife." Lorna and I had agreed a new signal. There was a tall tree near her grandfather's house, which I could see from the cliff top above the valley. In the top branches of the tree there were 7 large birds' nests from the last summer. Gwenny could climb like a cat, and if one morning I saw only 6 nests, then Lorna's grandfather was dead and she was in great danger. It was a bad winter that year. We had more snow than anyone could remember, and on Exmoor the snow was soon so deep that no one could walk on it safely. I had to find a way to cross this, but I had an idea. Lizzie had once shown me a book about the icy countries of the far north, where people wore snowshoes. The book had pictures of these wide, flat shoes which stopped travelers' feet going down through the snow. For the first time I thanked my sister in my heart for reading so many books. I found some wood and animal skins, and soon I had made some snowshoes, like the ones in Lizzie's book. We had a sled on the farm, which we used when the ground was covered in ice. A horse could not pull it in this weather, but, with my snowshoes, I could. I could use it to carry Lorna and her servant. Some days later I saw only 6 birds' nests in the tree, and that evening I tied myself to the sled, and left for Doone Valley. I took the sled to the waterfall, which was now a fall of ice, and tied it up there. Then I continued on foot, going around the south side of the valley towards the Doone Gate. But when I looked down, I saw there was a quicker way to reach Lorna. The sides of the valley, like everything else, were covered in deep snow, and here the snow was smooth and icy. I looked around to check that there were no dunes in sight, then sat down on the icy snow and pushed myself off. In seconds I had slid all the way down the mountainside, and landed in a hill of soft snow at the bottom. At Sir Ensor's house, I whispered Lorna's name below the window, as before. This time, Gwenny let me in, when she was sure who I was. But inside I saw a terrible sight. Gwenny looked almost mad with hunger, and Lorna lay back on a chair, as white as the valley all around us. "Good God!" I said, and ran to her. I took her in my arms, but she was so weak that she could not speak at first. "We've been kept in here for days without food," said Gwenny. "And they were going to keep us here until Lorna agreed to marry Carver. We must leave at once," I said. "Will you come with me, Lorna? I promise to take you safely through the snow." Lorna gave me her lovely smile. "Of course I will, dear," she whispered. "Of course I will. And you too, of course, Gwenny," I said. "Be quick now, and help me to get your mistress ready." From outside, I had heard the sounds of singing. There were usually guards around the house, Gwenny told me, but tonight the Doones were drinking and dancing to welcome Carver as their new leader. This would give us our chance, with all this happening, the robbers would never notice us leaving. We were soon ready. I picked up my beautiful Lorna and carried her through the snow and the darkness to the other end of the valley. Gwenny was able to follow us, putting her feet in the places where my snowshoes had been. I made Lorna comfortable in the sled, with her little servant beside her, and I told her to hold onto Lorna tightly. The waterfall was now a path of ice, very steep and dangerous, but I was able to take the sled down it, using my stick, and all my strength, to stop it going too fast on the ice. When we were down the waterfall, I tied myself to the sled and began to pull. It was hard work for me, but the best work I had ever done in my life. There was no time to lose, with Lorna so weak from hunger and cold, so I pulled fast, and an hour later we were home. My mother and sisters came to the door, and helped me to carry Lorna in. We put her in a chair by the fire, and gave her some soup. Then she slept, while I watched over her. After a time, she began to wake up. She put her trembling hands into mine, and looked at me with so much love in her eyes that I could not find the words to speak to her. We sat like this for several minutes, and then we heard a little sound behind us. It was Mother, crying with happiness to see us so loving. At this, Lorna got up and went to her. She knelt beside Mother's chair and looked up into her face. Mother put her hand on Lorna's hair. "My sweet child," she said softly. A few days later, when Lorna and I were sitting together by the fire, she said to me, "John, you gave me a beautiful ring, and now I want to give you something. It is only a very poor, old thing, but it's all I have. My grandfather gave it to me before he died. I hope you will take it." Then she put on my finger the strangest ring I had ever seen. It was very old, and there was a picture on it. It was hard to see what the picture was, but it looked almost like a cat in a tree. "I shall wear it, my love," I said, "until the day I die." Chapter 8. Soon everybody in our part of Exmoor knew that Lorna Doone was at Plover's Barrows farm. So I knew the Doones would come looking for Lorna as soon as they could. But, for now, the weather saved us. They could not move in the snow, and when the rains came in spring, they had even bigger problems. The rains were heavy, and when the snow also turned to water, the rivers became very high. In Doone Valley the robbers' homes were almost underwater. They needed most of their men to take care of their village. If they attacked us, we knew it could not be with as many men as they would like. Spring also brought a visitor for Annie. The snows had kept Tom Faggus away from the farm all winter, but now he came to see her, and he had something to tell her. Before the snows came, he said, "I went to London. and I have something to show for it." Then out of his pocket, he took a letter. It looked very important, and had the king's sign on it. "What do you think it is?" We all looked at it, but it was full of long lawyer's words and no one could understand what it meant. "I'll tell you what it means," laughed Tom. "It means that I am not a criminal anymore. This letter says that the king is ready to forget all my years as a robber, and I am a free man." We all wondered how this could be, but then Tom explained. "I spoke to Judge Jeffries. He knows me. He said, if you promise never to rob again, you can go free. There's enough for the king to worry about in this country already, with all his enemies. So if we can forget about you, that's good enough for us." Apostrophe. Everyone felt proud of Tom. We thought it had been very brave of him to go to Judge Jeffries. But now he had something even better to tell us. With the money he still had, Tom had bought some land. He was going to live an honest life, and be a farmer again. So we were not surprised when Tom asked Mother if he could marry Annie. Mother was not very sure of the new farmer Faggus. She was afraid that he would get bored with farming and go back to being a robber. But she could see that he loved Annie very much, and between us, Annie and I managed to persuade her. Now we began to prepare for the Doone's attack. Though the rivers were still high, people had begun to see a few of the robbers out on the roads, and we knew it would not be long before we would have to fight them. As we were preparing, we received another visitor, my old friend Jeremy Stickles. This time, though, he had not been sent to find me. To our surprise, he told us that he had been spying in Exmoor for many months. He had been sent down this way again by Judge Jeffries and the king. "You must not tell anyone what I'm doing," he said. "But I have been sent to do important work. The king has many enemies, and now I have been given some soldiers, though only a few, to help me look for them. But I have to ask you, can my soldiers and I stay here for a while?" I agreed immediately. When the Doones attacked, it would be a great help to have soldiers staying in the house. I told Jeremy all about Lorna, and he promised to help defend our farmhouse against any Doone attack. The next day Stickles came with his men. There were only 6 of them, but even to have these was a help. All we could do now was wait, and be ready each night for an attack. One day I came home late from the fields, and found all the women trembling with fear. Lorna had seen Carver Doone. She had gone out in the evening to look at some flowers by our stream. There were thick bushes on the other side, and when Lorna looked up, she saw 2 cruel black eyes staring at her. She was too frightened to move. Carver could not cross the stream because the water was too high, but he lifted his gun and fired at the ground by Lorna's feet. "Unless you come back tomorrow," he said, "and tell me how to destroy that farmer, Red, who will soon be a dead man because of you, this will be the place of your death." Lorna told us this, trembling. We knew that Carver would not wait until tomorrow, and we got ready for an attack that night. When the Doones attacked a farm, they always started fires in the hayricks first, to frighten everyone and show what they could do. So when darkness came, I went with my best gun and a heavy stick to one of the hayricks, and waited beside it. I had made sure that Lorna stayed in the house, but little Gwenny climbed a tree near the river. From there she could see up the river to the only place where it was possible to cross. Soon the moon came up, and before very long, Gwenny came running towards me. 10 of them, coming across the river, she said. "They'll be here in a minute. Go into the house and tell Mr. Stickles and his men." "I'll stay here and watch," I said. The robbers broke down our gate, and rode towards the house. I could see the soldiers hiding in the shadows, waiting for the order to fire, but the Doones then turned towards the hayricks. "Kill every man and every child, and burn the farm," came the deep voice of Carver Doone. "Start over there." He was pointing to the hayrick where I was, though he could not see me. "But remember, Lorna is mine, and I will kill any man who touches her." As Carver spoke, I pointed my gun at him, but, will you believe me? I didn't shoot. I had never killed a man, nor even badly hurt one. I did not think it was an easy thing to do. Now, I can say that I wish I had killed him. But I put my gun down, and picked up my stick, a more honest weapon than a gun, I thought. 2 young Doones came towards me, with burning sticks. The first put his stick to the hayrick I was standing near, and it started to burn. I hit him on the arm, and heard his bone break as he fell over with a shout of pain. The other men ran to see what had happened, and I took his fire stick and broke it. Then he jumped on me, but I caught him, broke his arm, and threw him on top of his friend. I could still see Carver and wanted to jump at him, but I knew he would simply shoot me. While I was thinking about it, there came a loud noise and 6 tongues of flame from near the farmhouse. Stickles had ordered his men to fire at the Doones as they came towards the house. 2 fell and the others ran back. They had something to think about now. No one had ever fought the Doones as we were doing that night. Now my moment had come. I came out from my place near the burning rick. I knew Carver Doone by his size even in the shadowy moonlight, and I took hold of him by the beard. "Do you call yourself a man?" I said. For a second he was too surprised to do anything. No one had ever looked at him the way I did now. He lifted his gun, but I was too quick for him and knocked it out of his hand. "Now, Carver Doone, take warning," I said. "You think you are so much better than everyone else, but you are no more than an evil robber. Lie low in the dirt from which you came." Then I kicked his feet from under him and knocked him down. When they saw that he was down, the other Doones ran, but Carver simply got up and walked away, shouting at me and everyone. We wondered whether to chase the Doones, but Mr. Stickles said it would be too dangerous on them more in the dark. One thing was certain, the robbers had known defeat that night on our farm, something they had never experienced since the day they came to Exmoor. And they went home without 4 of their men. 2 were dead, shot by the soldiers, and the other 2 were the men whose arms I had broken by the hay ricks. We buried the dead men in the fields, and Jeremy Stickles sent the 2 wounded men to the prison in Taunton. Chapter 9. The Doones' attack had been defeated. We knew that they would come again, as soon as they could, in larger numbers. But for now, Jeremy Stickles gave me something else to think about. My dearest wish was to marry Lorna as soon as I could, but after Jeremy's story I began to wonder if it would ever be possible. A few days after our battle with the Doones, Jeremy said he had something to say to me. "John, I didn't think the time was right to tell you this before. But now you must hear what I have to say. As you know, I've been riding around Exmoor for many months, looking for information that might be useful to the king. I remembered all that you told me about Lorna, and I think I have discovered something about her. It may not be easy for you to hear, John. Are you ready? I will do my best," I said. So he began his story. 6 or 7 months ago, before the snows began, I stopped at an inn on my way from Dulverton to watch it. The inn was all by itself, right by the sea, and was very quiet. I was the only person staying there, and the woman who owned the inn sat down and talked to me during my meal. She was dark and foreign-looking, and intelligent. I was very interested to know how an unusual woman like her had come to live in this lonely inn, and she told me her story. She said that she was from Italy, and her name was Benita. Many years ago, while she was working in Rome, she had met an English family. They were traveling in Italy because they'd had a terrible argument in England with another family. Benita did not know much about the argument, except that it had been about land. Benita liked this English family. They were very rich, but they were also kind. So when they asked her to travel with them and take care of their children, she agreed. She loved the children, a little girl and boy, so she was very happy in her work. At first everything went well. Together, Benita and the family traveled up through northern Italy and into France. But on the French side of the Pyrenees, the husband of the family had a riding accident and was killed. His wife was deeply unhappy, and would not move from the place where he had died for many months. But finally she decided to go home to England and try to start life again. Benita stayed with her, and they took a ship to the Devon coast. They stayed at Exeter, and then left in a coach for Watchet, in the north of Somerset. The lady had a house there, where she planned to live. They were warned, at Dulverton, about robbers on the roads, but the lady would not listen. She even traveled at night, which, as we know, is a very dangerous thing to do. So of course they were attacked by robbers. It happened near the sea. The coachman drove onto the sand, and the robbers followed on their horses. The coach's wheels began to go down in the soft sand, and as the robbers came nearer, the lady pointed to one of them and said, "I know that man. He is our family's old enemy." Then a great wave crashed against the coach and turned it over. Benita hit her head on the door and could not remember what happened. The next thing she knew was that she was lying on the sand and the robbers had gone. She looked around for her mistress and saw her sitting on a rock, with her dead son in her arms. The little girl had disappeared. Benita and the two coachmen took the lady into the town, but later that night, she died. "This is a sad story," said Jeremy. "Give me a drink, boy." I saw that there were tears in the brave man's eyes. "What was the lady's name?" I asked. "And what happened to the little girl? And why did Benita stay there?" "I will answer the last question first," said Jeremy. "That's the easiest. Benita stayed in that place because the Doones, if that's who they were, stole everything from the coach, and she had no money. She could not go back to Italy. She married a man who lived near the place because he was kind and could give her a home. But the little girl, Jeremy. What happened to her? John, can't you see it? You are more likely to know than anyone in the world. As certain as I sit here, that little girl is Lorna Doone. The truth was, I had guessed this, almost from the beginning of Jeremy's story. But it was almost too painful to believe, and I wanted Jeremy to say it. When he described the coach leaving Dulverton, the picture was very clear to me, because I remembered that coach, with the foreign-looking woman, the beautiful lady, the little boy, and the young dark-haired girl. I had seen them, on the day John Fry came to collect me from school, on the day I learnt my father had died. I also remembered the frightening sight I saw later that night, of the Doones riding with the things they had stolen, and the one with the little girl across his horse in front of him. I also remembered my anger. Now I saw how the very same day had been the blackest and unhappiest of both my and Lorna's childhood days, and how from the very start, our lives had been joined together. But there was still one question to answer. What was the family's name? I said. The father was Lord Doone. He came from a very grand family. But there is more to this. Look at your ring, John, the one that Lorna gave you. Look at that strange sign, of a cat in a tree. I saw that same sign above the inn door. That is the sign of the house of Lorna. It is the family that Lorna's mother came from. John, your Lorna belongs to one of the richest and most famous families in England.